hello. Happy Friday, everyone. Happy Friday. I hope you all are having an amazing and blessed day so far. Thank you all so much for joining us for another amazing episode of I'm Bougie Girl podcast. And tonight we have a special episode. We're going to be talking to several men, and we're going to be talking about men's issues on tonight. We're going to be talking to men about COVID, battling with social injustices, their mental health, and what healing looks like for them, what healing looks like for them as a man, and what do they bring to the table, and how this conversation can be a blessing to other people. So thank you all so much. Hello, Joanne. Thank you so much for joining. Share this out because we're about to have a powerful conversation with several men, and my co-host on tonight, Andrea Smoke, your girlfriend next door, girlfriend coach. Such a blessing to me, such an amazing woman of God, and just such an amazing woman of excellence. So I'm super excited to have her and her husband, Rich Smoke, with me on tonight, along with Dr. Jonathan Fortier. He's going to be joining us as well. And we're going to be talking about men issues and mental health. So joining us now is Dr. J and Andrea and Rich Smoke. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you all so much. Hi, thank you all so much for joining me on tonight. So I want to start with Dr. J. How are you doing? And how, I want to ask you first, what did you learn in 2021 about yourself, and something new that you've learned, or what did COVID bring to the table for you about yourself?
Wow. First of all, thank you for having me on. I enjoyed this page and this channel extremely. 2020. Amazing year, right? No one expected it. I think the biggest thing that 2020 taught me, so I had to act heavily. I'm a herbalist as well, so I had to act heavily on health in 2020 and make sure that preparation was huge. In other words, with it coming to fruition. So the biggest thing I learned is that it pays to be prepared. In other words, from the preparation from years ago, we were talking about what if these particular things would happen? What if this particular thing would happen? And then it happens. So I think what it taught me more than anything is that preparatory work pays off. It's better to have something and not need it than to need it and not have it. So 2020 was huge, and it just put me to work a lot and put those things to work a lot. That's how 2020 taught me that was what I needed to do. And then you just have to act on it and be responsible.
That's so good. Thank you so much for sharing. We have to be prepared. We have to be working ahead of time. You have to get ready before you have to be ready so you don't have to get ready. So you have to make sure that we're working and preparing. So Andrea and Rich, what did 2020 teach you all, and what did you learn in that year?
Well, I would say that 2020 taught me quite a few things. I said, one, it taught me a lot of patience. It taught me to realize that life brings challenges that you don't expect. It taught me how to better cope with those challenges as they come to me. And the reason why I say that and I talk about these things is because I spent about 6 months of my 2020 year in Kuwait, and this was somewhat unexpected. My job required me to do a deployment for about 90 days, and that 90 days turned into 180 days. And why I say that it taught me patience was because I was in a country that I couldn't leave, and I was in a surroundings with people from all over the world, dealing with the pandemic and not really understanding, if I could catch it, if I could be passing it to someone. I mean, because they didn't have, the level of, medical support that they have now. So it taught me the patience and understanding that, God's not going to give me any challenges that I can't deal with. Coping with the, the situation. I could go into grave detail, but I won't, in terms of, being there, but
Right.
and it also taught me how to deal with challenges away from home during the pandemic. It was just a lot that I think I learned, and this kind of made me stronger than I thought that I really was. Showed that I was stronger than I really was.
Right. And that's awesome. And Andrea, what did you learn, or what did 2020 teach you?
Um, for me, I don't know I was already in a space of love. I already love myself. I love spending time with myself. I'm an only child. As Richard said, for most of the time he wasn't here. So for me, it was just a time to be able to reflect, look inward. As Dr. Jonathan said, it was a lot of prayer, a lot of time for us to, really ask, what else can I do with the gifts that I currently have? Because I'm in the house, I'm alone, I have my dog, but it could get boring. So you start to think inward, like, what else could I do to use what I have, not only to entertain, but to provide maybe something to someone who's needing an ear, or whatever your gift is, to, we have social media to spread a good word, so I think I learned, first of all, I'm okay with me. I really learned that. And I think more than anything, just to go to marriage, I think I learned it's more important to be friends than anything else, because I think for Richard and I, we spend so much, he works from home now, so spending so much time together, if we didn't have a friendship, like a genuine, like like we, divorces happened out of COVID. A lot of people weren't accustomed to seeing their spouses. They would just pass each other at night. One comes home at 5, the other one at 7. They in the bed by 9 sleep. So they really never had that time together. Luckily, we've been able to nurture our relationship for all these years. So I feel like we've been able to get through this because we have a foundation of friendship. So I learned that's very important.
And that's beautiful that you have to understand, that to nurture that relationship, to nurture that friendship, that you have as a couple, and to be able to understand that, and let it grow. Instead of growing apart, you're growing closer together during this time of pandemic and tragedy and all those things. So I wanted to ask the men, with all the racial injustices that happened in 2020, and just they've happened before, but we really saw it elevated, it seems like, in 2020. How did these things that you're witnessing, how did that impact you on a personal level? And Rich, I'll ask you first.
So for me, it's more sad, some form of anger, but understanding that anger doesn't resolve any issues, particularly when you already feel that you're at a disadvantage. So it kind of had me ask the question, what more can I do to make things better for, the future of our young Black men and women? What can I do to, educate them based on my experiences, my understanding about life? Understanding that you don't have to challenge everything that, you're challenged with. Sometimes you have to, as I've been told in life, you have to pick your battles. You have to somewhat step back and say, well, is it worth me fighting? What is it worth? And it was more, I would say, disheartening that we destroy our own communities to illustrate or to show our disappointment, anger, and dissatisfaction about things that are going on in the world. So I think that would be my perspective, is just to try to do more to help the youth, because they're our future of tomorrow. I'm 52, so I've lived quite a full life. So I think it's more about giving back to others to help them grow, and to try to help build a better tomorrow for them.
And that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Dr. J, what is your perspective on that as far as, seeing everything that we saw in 2020, especially it seemed like it was just elevated so much because we're all at home watching TV. How did that impact you personally on a personal
note? Disparity.
I didn't hear you. What did you say?
You're talking about specifically the racial injustices that we saw
Mm-hmm.
while this was happening.
Right.
I mean, that's huge because I think there's a piece of it while it's happening that is not new. I think the hardest thing for me to deal with is the fact that we have new generations that come on the scene. And many of our generations have dropped the ball in terms of focusing in on our own communities and how we deal with these issues that have already been here. Okay. The thing I think I hate worse more than anything is to see an issue that's on the table that looks brand new to one of our youth, but it's been here. And it's something that it showed me that we have to, this is a society, this is a day where we love to talk about self, right? And everybody loves to talk about self, start with self, et cetera, et cetera. But it really just pounds in the point that, I have to deal with home first. The way you deal with an outsider's racial discrimination and things of that nature is first you have to deal with home first. So for me as a man, I think one of the hardest things to deal with is the fact that as a man, you have a structure that's in you as a man. But that structure, in order to even push back on the racial discrimination, there must be a structure first in the community. There has to be a structure first in the home. There has to be a structure first that allows our people to respond in a way that, that actually has some power and some deep worth to it. So for me, watching these particular things happen as a man, and knowing that we have the potential to do so much more to fight against this as a people, but we just have not gone inward yet enough in unity to fix our own issues so that we can start raising a breed that can handle these particular situations in a much more effective manner.
And how do you suppose that we do something like that, where we can have people where we can be more impactful and more effective in the community?
Well, one of the things is, every tribe has a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And you don't have a community unless you have a family. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to address our own internal issues. We have young men being raised out here without examples that they need to have primarily in the home. A young boy is looking at his father as an example. He might get some nurturing. He get the nurturing from his mother, but he's looking at the example of his father. And then it's the same with our young ladies. They're not seeing a good balance in the home. So they grow up with imbalances that have to be fixed. And by this time, there's a lot more dysfunction that's being passed down, things of this nature. I think it starts with, I'm 45, and so I'm Generation X. And so I always put out a clarion call to my generation and those above me to make it your priority to go into the places where the issues are. We as a people, I remember some people asked me during the years, they asked me, hey, come to the Million Man March and then other things where we're going to march in certain places. I said, listen, if you're not marching into the hood to grab our young sons and to give them order and things of this nature and to put them into a place where they can actually protect the women and things of this nature and teach them what they need to have, then I'm not really interested. So I think that we need to really, as a collective, get focused, those that are willing and able, and start saying, hey, listen, there's a priority. We have got to go where the issues are because they're not going to come to us, and help fix our people and help fix our sons and our daughters.
Wow, that's really good. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really impactful. And Rich, I wanted to know if you wanted to add something on that. I know you mentioned about the next generation and helping young people. What are your thoughts on just having some organizing and programs, and your thoughts on what we need to bring to the table to make a difference in regard to some of these things that we're seeing?
Well, I think for me, it starts as Jonathan said, it starts at home. It starts with the young, brothers and sisters. And the reason why I say that is because, with all of the, um, you know, the globalization that we have, and all the outside and external, you know, uh, uh, impacts that we have in our community, we have a tendency to stray. So I agree with Jonathan that we have to get into those communities, start with the very young folks, single parents, for one, that don't have a male model. Teach them, what is considered, important, and things that are not important. We just need to grab these kids at a very young age, and I would say that probably a lot of it comes from maybe even grabbing your young family members, and maybe that'll even spark the young family members, because they have some type of relationship with you. I mean, it may be a little hard to go into a kid, a stranger, and start talking to them, because a lot of times kids believe that you're preaching to them. You're an old man. That those days are over. We don't have to, stand back and take this and take that. We can take up for ourselves. We see it in social media all the time, where we have the young youth, or up and coming stars that a lot of our young youth, pay attention to, and they're just doing things that are just, unbelievable. So our treatment kind of comes from that. We get the majority that'll look at us and say, well, look at them. You give them a little bit of this, you give them a little of that, and look how they act, look how they behave, look how they react. So I think we need to, again, as Johnson said, we need to take care of our homes first. We don't have children, but that doesn't mean that there aren't children or young folks that we can't mentor, guide, and give support to try to, push them into a direction that they cannot just use their hands and their fists and guns and weapons to display their displeasure, but maybe try to get them in a position where they can make some political change.
And I just want to add to this, because I don't have children, one of the things that I made sure, as far as mentorship, I always volunteered in some way, some form, and I was a part of the Big Sister, Big Brother program, and I actually received my little sister when she was 8 years old. She's now 27 or 28 now. But to say that, I just remember so specifically not seeing the male presence. It was me and other women, but I really just didn't see a lot of men taking that step to actually mentor, because that's a program that's available. It's a large program. It doesn't require anything from you but your time. And the nice thing about it, you can say I'm able to do once a month, or whatever your abilities are, to try to mentor that to mentor that child. But I also want to say, Jonathan mentioned Generation X. I'm also a part of that generation. And I don't have children, but I can see where somewhere, I don't know where, because I wasn't a part of it. At least I don't think so. I don't know where Generation X has gone wrong. Like, I really feel like the responsibility of what I'm seeing, we have to wake up and be like, stop saying, oh, we don't know what's going on. They need mentorship. What has happened in these households that we raise? Because if you're in your 40s, you can definitely have a 20-year-old or older, or you know what I mean? What has gone on that these children are so disrespectful? no one opens doors anymore. No, there's no chivalry. They're disrespectful to women. I'm assuming they're disrespectful to their moms. I just don't know what has happened. I'm just being honest. I would like to know what happened. I've seen and I've made observations in different households, and I think one of the things is priorities in a household are not what they used to be. As we said earlier, passing each other in the wind. No one makes family
The priority.
the priority anymore. It's all about how much money you making, who can make, how deep can we go into the six figures? How big of a house can we get? Are we going to have the Porsche? Are we going to have the Range Rover? We're so fixated on material things that we've lost sight of this child not only need maybe me, but I recently, I know I'm getting off subject a little bit, but I recently saw, there was a doctor, she was on her own network, and she kept bragging and saying how good of a child she had, straight A student. But he's dead now because he went on to Snapchat, and somehow someone came to his Snapchat and offered him a pill that was laced with fentanyl, I think it was. But anyway, he took this pill that someone mailed to him through the mail, and he OD'd in his. So my thing is, how did who's checking the mail? Like, remember when you couldn't even, your mama went through the mail. She sat down, your mom or dad, like she dispersed the mail.
Right.
Certain things that you just didn't do. Even if you checked it, you gave it to your mom, and she would be like, okay, let me, why would you be getting a piece of mail? Who is this person? You know? So I just feel like we've disconnected a lot, and I just wanted to make that point. So, speaking of childhood, I wanted to ask a question to you guys.
Well, let's see if Jonathan wanted to address that. Did you, Dr. J, did you want to address that, or did you have anything you wanted to add to what she was saying? Like, where did we go wrong, or what is going on, the disconnect that's going on?
Absolutely. We went wrong in the 80s and in the 70s, but it started really taking place and taking hold in the 80s. First, it was a kind of a conglomeration of things that occurred. So, we were blessed as Generation X to get in on still two-parent households. That was something we came up with still. I can still remember, I was raised, my mother, my father. I had blessed examples that prayed over me every day, fed my life every day. My father got up and showed me a visual of manhood every morning at 4 a.m. when I said, love you, Daddy, when he was going out to work. I'm also a pastor's son. So I learned a lot of things early about helping others, being out on the streets, doing a lot of work. But also on the streets, though, that was still a time where if you went outside and you did something wrong, everybody on the street knew your parents, and were a form of a parent. So we still had some community there. But what was happening underneath all that, remember, they had already dumped drugs into our communities. So we had that going on. Then the big change came whenever you switch the voice of mentorship from the elders to entertainers, there's your issue. So it's the entertainment industry. We started gangster rap. We started, being and hoes, and we started the players, and we started all of these particular things. That started with our generation, and the entertainment industry connected with that huge, and they started to control the voice. So early on in rap, you had conscious rap, which was building up the community. But then all of a sudden it started switching, and they started controlling the narrative. And next thing you know, instead of the wise voices of the community, we had, who was the entertainer of the day, and what were they teaching? And so the majority of them were preaching and teaching a word that had everything to do with breaking up the community. No marriage, had everything to do with being loose, had everything to do with, when you say a player, that's a man subconsciously saying, I'm not thinking about marriage any longer. When a woman wants to become a video vixen, she's saying, I don't want to be a housewife any longer. See what I'm saying? So all of these things started to take place. Our generation birthed this, right? And then they say, oh, millennials, they so bad. I said, you crazy. We're the ones who birthed it. We're the ones who started having babies out of wedlock at 12 and 13 years old. And babies started raising babies. And now you see the product of this. I was just having a conversation today with a millennial about, and she had a good understanding on life about how many of the children were not raised. It's a difference between coming up in a house of a mother and a father that were married, that had you on purpose and in purpose of a marital covering, and they taught you purpose. It's a difference between that and having a baby by mistake and treating the baby like it was a mistake, and then blaming the father for not being in a home that never existed in the first place. This is the paradigm that we have today, and it's just continued to grow, 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 grow. The biggest voice our community has is entertainers and not elders. And when we can switch the voice back to the wise ones, then things will start to change. So I definitely agree with everything you all said. It starts with, I have an organization called P10. It's called COI, but we have a program called P10, and it brings households together with a $10 investment, but it gives them access to protocol in the household via internet. How do you raise a son? How do you raise a daughter? How do you affirm them? How do you, through specific ages, things of this nature, almost kind of getting back to the raising protocols of how you raise kings and queens again. And so that's something that on any level, we need to be dealing in big time. Did you say something? I couldn't hear you.
I said, no, I was agreeing with what you're saying, just having that in place, that structure in place of the household, like you said, to be able to give them the tools that they need to be successful. I think that's awesome that you have that program available in order to help reestablish or reconnect the family again. I think that's awesome.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Dr. J, you made a very, very good point. And, when you talked about the structure of family, I don't even know what happened to grandmothers anymore. Like, grandmothers today are like 35 years old. And the ones who are older, going back to entertainment, because what I'm about to say is based off entertainment. But literally today, I saw a woman who said she is 69 years old. She was a beautiful woman, though, 69 years old, but she called into a show and said that she wanted to have her body done. And I just could not imagine. I was like, you are a grandmother. Where are your grandkids? Where are you supposed to be making pies and cake, right, and frying the chicken? Right. She said, I want to know, at this age, is it too late for me to go get my stomach tucked and the lift and the whole thing? Because even she is influenced by the entertainment, and it blew my mind.
And I think, even though, like to your point, you're hearing grandmothers, having, being considered cougars, and they want to date the younger men, and they feel like they have to compete with the younger girls, the 20-year-olds, the 30-year-olds. Like you said, they want to have their bodies done. They don't want to cook fried chicken anymore. They don't want to cook a home cooked meal anymore. They don't want to do all of those things. They want to be out in the streets too. They want to go partying and vacationing with their two-piece on, and all of these things like that. And so where's the nurturing? Where's the compassion? Where's the teaching, the values of being, your granddaughters, of being a young lady and being valued by men, and understanding that you're a precious jewel, right? And you don't have to be a thought, like they call it out in the streets, because grandma's being out there thoughting it up. So I mean, it's just unfortunate because, like you said, where did the grandmothers go? Where did these people go? Like you said, grandmothers are, and I tell my children, I'm almost 50, and I'm like, I don't want to be a grandmother right now. I don't want you to have children before you're ready, because I don't feel like I should be the one to raise your children. You should be able to be in a place where you can raise your children, and I can be a support alongside of you to teach them certain things. But I don't want to raise your children for you. I want you to be ready. I want you to be mature. Oh, just because I'm a certain age, I don't feel like, oh, it's grandmother time. But I want my children to be in a position to be able to be a healthy parent, a whole parent, and have a two-parent household, and not just be, oh, I just want to have a baby or whatever. So I think we still need to enlist these values and be able to talk to our children honestly about what's going on, and remind our daughters that you're queens, remind our sons that they're kings. And that's why when I talked to my son on Wednesday, it was a king conversation, because I look at him as a young king. You know, I make sure that my sons know who they are, and I tell them that all the time. So it's so important for us to continue to instill those values in our children.
Okay. Richard, did you have anything to add?
Well, I mean, I know this wasn't necessarily the initial question, but going back to the older women, doing certain things to make themselves more appealing. The problem, I think, is, when you're a 60-year-old woman, you're single, and you're looking for your next Mr. Right, you are in competition with the woman that's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80 years old. Why? Because the men of today have that same pool that they can pick from. So you have young women who don't mind having an 80-year-old man taking care of them. So if he's taking care of her, he may not have time to date a 60-year-old woman, or he may not be interested in dating a woman of that age. So it becomes a lot more difficult and challenging for that woman to compete, because things aren't the same as they used to be, where you would go to the library or go to church or go to a PTA meeting and meet a decent man. I mean, that pool becomes a lot, smaller when you're talking about today. I mean, not only just the men, I'm sorry, not just the women in your local community, you have women that you can talk to from around the world. So you're competing not only with the locals, you're competing with the women that are international. So
Exactly.
I think that is the real reason why a lot of the women, because I think they don't feel that, the good women or the good girls, get those guys that everyone else is getting. It's always the woman that is doing probably a lot more to make
Right.
themselves more appealing. So I think that's part of why they do those things.
And
That's a great point.
that's a
Yeah.
question I always ask my friends who are trying to invest and do it right, especially their daughters. I always wonder, who do you feel is raising a son for this daughter? Because you investing so much into this daughter, and she's eloquent. She has everything that you would think a man would want, but the men today, they may want that, but then they'll take that and then even marry her, and then have to have something else on the side that's more exciting, that that they see on social media. So then you have all that to deal with, women having their hearts broken. So
Right.
I mean, I could go into so much, but I want to ask this question because Dr. J had brought
That's
up
good.
his childhood. I wanted to know, you said you were raised with your father and he was a pastor. I think that's what you said. What was your childhood like, and what were really the expectations of you as a young man? What was expected of you?
Excuse my lighting. I think I lost a light here. Post the question one more time. What were my expectations as a young man being raised by specifically
A pastor.
Yeah, what was your
a
childhood
pastor?
like, and what was your expectation? What were the expectations of you? What did they expect of you as a man?
I think any man that is a well-rounded man has an expectation of the same with his son. Being raised as a pastor's son, I think the one thing I never heavily felt was that there was okay, well, let me put it like this, expectation on different levels, okay? I think because I always paid attention to my father, and so I developed in a way that he really didn't have to continually tell me of the expectations, if that makes sense. But then we always had expectations that simple things like being a young man, like a saying that I always remember and I pass down to young men today is, we don't sleep in this house. You know, these little things that my father taught me when I was young, that, hey, you're a man, you wake up, you work, you get something done today. You don't have idle time, things of this nature. And then having an example with him of being a godly man, being a man that prayed all the time in front of my face, whether it be from at the table. If I didn't, pray over my food, I'm in trouble, right? or if I saw him praying at for 10,000 people, right? So seeing a man that prayed, seeing a man that prayed for his family, seeing a man that at the drop of a dime, if my mom felt any form of any way, literally on the spot, prayer right there, care right there, and seeing all these particular things, I really didn't feel like I had a heavy expectation on me because I was already evolving into it, if that makes sense. But I did have the basic expectations that a father has with a son, that he's nurturing his son, like you respect women. It's about marriage. Don't have sex before you're married because you want to be in right standing with God. These particular things, you need to be in order, right? So he did a lot of that, and a lot of those, I never felt pressure on me. I just felt example in front of me, if that makes sense. So it was never a thing of me feeling like he expected so much out of me. I think that's because I was already doing things. I was already a musician. I was already, at 12, 13 years old, he had already pulled me up to teach my first message and things of that nature. So I honored my father. So I didn't really, the only expectation that I felt was I carry this name. And so I have to carry this name with honor. And not just because it's my father's, but my father's father. But more important than anything, they gave me this, they put God right here in front of my face. And it made me want to please God more than anything on the planet. And that's what kind of kept me in a place where I'm seeking to please my father, but I'm also seeking to please my heavenly father. And all of these things kind of come with it. So I never felt heavy expectation, but I knew that it was there. Because, when you come from a house like that, when you come from that type of value system, then it's something that, based on the child, it's something that I wanted to adopt anyway, if that makes sense.
Rich, and the same question for you. What were your expectations growing up in your household? What were your...
As you can see the dynamic that goes on over here.
Well, I would say that my childhood was probably quite the opposite of Dr. Jonathan's. So I'm the youngest of four children. My mother was a fairly young mother when my father passed away unexpectedly. And she had, and my father had a plan for their lives, outside of where we ended up growing up. So we ended up growing up in a small town in South Carolina. And my mother, she was a parent of four in the late 60s, a young Black woman, if you can imagine, with four children. So she resorted back to what she knew. She ended up going back to South Carolina to be near where my grandmother and grandfather lived, and her sisters and brothers were there. But I grew up without a father per se. My mother, most of you are familiar with a lot of Southerners. She had a long-term live-in boyfriend, if you will. The relationship from my perspective wasn't the best. He wasn't the best example, or gave the best examples. I probably got most of the worst examples from him. He really didn't teach me anything. So when you ask the question, well, what were my expectations? My mother didn't really place any expectations on me. She was very much so a strong disciplinarian. She raised us, pretty sternly. So it wasn't a whole lot of I love yous and kisses and hugs, because she was a single woman. She just did the best that she could. And she raised us the way that she was raised. She was raised pretty sternly from my grandmother, and that's how she raised us. My mother ended up finishing high school, and so once I finished high school, it wasn't a whole lot my mother could tell me in terms of this is what I expect you to do. Our expectations came from you do whatever I tell you to do when I tell you to do it, and you respect my house. Outside of that, it wasn't so much life expectations. My mother didn't nurture me to want to be in a particular profession. So a lot of what I learned and a lot of my expectations grew from when I was able to get outside of my small town and see other people succeed in life. And that's when I started to kind of get more of an idea of what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be. I knew what I was good at. I was always very good at math. I was always good at, being sociable, being kind of funny. So, my guidance counselor was the one that kind of took me under his wing. I knew his two sons in high school and kind of guided me into, what direction I ended up going, which was in engineering. He sat me down one day and said, well, what do you want to do? And my response was, well, I'm going to go in the Army and take care of my mom, send money back home, just like all the other good Army guys that I know or have seen. That's what, that's the best way to take care of my mom. She wasn't, making a whole lot of money. So I felt that was my way to give back. But he said, well, have you ever thought about college? And I said, no. I said, college wasn't really, what I thought I wanted to do. And, one day I had a conversation with my mom and she said, well, what are you going to do after you graduate? And I said, well, I'm going in the Army. She said, no, you're not. You're going to go to college. And, that was probably one of the first times I was trying to be defiant towards my mother. I got a little big for my britches, but my mom is like 5'11", a stern woman. She doesn't, really, take disrespect in any forms, probably to today.
Miss Gloria. Yeah. Like I'm really over here like, Lord, please let this man be careful about his life. Okay.
But she was a very stern woman. She, demanded her respect, and she said, this is what you're going to do. And I moved out smartly and ended up going to college. So, I think my expectations kind of grew from seeing other people succeed and looking at what other people were doing in terms of their professions. So that kind of gave me an idea of what I wanted to do to be successful in life.
And just so I can just, we've been together
23 years, almost 23.
Yeah. 23 years. So I'll say one of the things when you were talking about examples of mentorship and things like that, I think for him, just based off what stories he's told me, the community did play a great part, going over to friends' houses. You told me how you saw what it looked like to see a mom and a dad and actually the father being the head of the table and him being served. And so the community served him, as you were saying, Dr. Jonathan, as well as, him being able to travel and get outside of his community. He was able to see other Black men or men in general that fed into him. And the one, you didn't talk about your grandfather, but I just wanted to make that point that he was an example of what the community could help in a child that is fatherless. I really want to get to this next question. I don't know if Miranda's having difficulties over there, but
I'm back. My power was going up.
Question?
I had my power was going down, so I had to get my power cord. I was like, my computer's going to shut off. So I know, and thank you all again for sharing your story, for your transparency, Dr. Jonathan and Rich, because I'm sure this is helpful. So if you all have not shared this out, please share this out to your walls. Share this out with a young man that may need some encouragement on tonight. So we're talking to men about, mental health. We're going to get a little bit into that in a few minutes. And we're just talking about what healing looks like. We're going to talk about that towards the end. I know we probably won't be able to get through all of this because if we do, we'll probably be on here a couple of hours. But I know, I'm not sure if you all heard this saying growing up, boys will be boys. I'm not sure if that's something that you heard growing up or you heard that being said. Do you feel like this, is this an excuse or a pass for bad behavior? Or what do you feel like when you hear this phrase, Dr. J? What do you feel like this means when you're here? Like, oh, boys are going to just be boys. Boys are just going to do what they do or whatever. What does this mean? Or do you feel like it's like a pass for bad behavior?
I do in a sense. I pay attention to who's speaking. And I've never heard that. I mean, I've heard it on light levels. The same phrase could be used on a heavy level. It could be used on a light level, right? It could be used where the child is just, running around a little too busy, or it could be used with a child just out here just getting folk pregnant, right? So,
right.
For me, on that particular level, I believe it's most definitely. There's a lot of things right now that's going on that's just flat out cop outs. We have a society, and people these days just like to kind of brush things off, right? Just kind of push it over to the side. And so we definitely have that. When I've heard it said, it was usually from men that had that background themselves. It was usually from men that were irresponsible themselves, right? It was men that didn't have really that lineup of order or structure being exhibited in how they passed it down in the first place. So it was kind of more of an expression of their speech because it was a reflection of them versus, what needs to really be said. I've never heard that from an elder or from a peer that has any form of deep wisdom or structure in place, because they know that it's very imperative that a boy just don't be
right
on that particular level. Like, no,
right
don't be out here wilding, right?
right
So
exactly.
I do believe that it has turned into this day and age into a kind of, let the boys do what they do, but kind of AKA look at the girls, but they're not really even looking after the women either, though. To me, it's just a bunch of talk. There's a lot of talk these days. Just a whole, especially in this social media society, just folks just like to talk all day, and but at the end of the day, people are turning turning a deaf ear, and they turning a blind eye, to what's really happening. But I think that's just because it's them, though. That,
I agree with that. I wanted to ask you, since you mentioned it, I know this is not one of our questions, Andrea, but I wanted to ask because Dr. J mentioned it about looking out for the women. I know lately you've been hearing a lot about Black women are starting to look at other races of men because, it's been known that we've always had the Black men's back. I'm always looking out for the men. I'm always looking out for the Black men, holding them down or whatever. And now you're seeing more of Black women going to like other races or whatever. Do you want to speak on that, or what do you think about that? Because I know you mentioned we're not looking out for the women either. So, what do you think about that?
That's that to me. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking. Okay. What do I think about that? Oh, that's a heavy one. First, I believe. Let me be honest. First, I believe it's an illusion. That's number one. In the society that we live in, how can I put it? You kind of have the facts, and then you have the illusion of the facts, which comes in the media form. And this is where you see a lot of social media. And on social media is where people are very loud. And it doesn't really matter who the person is. Social media is a place where a person can say one thing, put one meme up, and they get 17 people with it, and all of a sudden people are like, the majority of women are. And I'm like, no, the majority of women are not looking to other races. However, there are a minority that are, and that's pretty that's interesting. Let me tell you why. Because you have men that are doing the same thing. And this goes back to what I was saying with we're not dealing with the house. We're not dealing with and only a person that is responsible and has enough experience to know what's going on. That's the only person that can truly address what's going on. And so now that we have these new generations on the scene, and all they see is they're part of a result, right? And so now we have results, we have primarily these days broken families and broken homes, and then we have results from that. And so it's hard for a Black woman, and let me speak on this real quick too. It's very hard for a Black woman to see the worth in a Black man, especially when the society or the governing heads' number one priority is to keep your Black man down. So all she sees on the media is a picture of a Black woman with another nationality. See, these are the subject matters people don't want to talk about, but this is what is spit out on the media all the time. It's about the royals, right? Black woman, white man. We can look at videos, we can watch movies, we can go down the list. And the primary thing that what you're going to see is you're going to see a Black woman with a white man, because the strongest force, especially in this society, is a Black man. You got to keep a Black man down. The Black man is the protector. The Black man is a representation of freedom for his tribe, for his people, for his woman, for his household. And so I think it's a conglomeration of, it's been made to be popular, right? Because there's an agenda behind it. And so now when you see the result, you see a Black woman that says, hey, I don't see what I'm looking for, and it's not looking for me, right? And that's because you don't see the condition that your man has been put in. You don't see the battle, you don't see the war that's been waged on your Black man. If you knew that story, then you stay a while and you help cultivate for a while. If you knew that story. If you knew that story, and this is also another problem with, when you see that a lot also when you don't have a father in the house to vet the process. You see this a lot, so this goes back to tribalism. This goes back to when you don't have a man in the home to vet the process of what's going on. No man on the planet in his right mind will ever just give his daughter off to an enemy tribe. This is just the basics of tribalism across the world. But this is something that we don't have intact. Instead, we've been given a culture that's not even our own. So when I see Black women looking, I can't blame the ones that don't have an understanding of the full story, right? I can't blame you. But I can try to help expose it and bring it to the forefront. So I believe it's a myth, but I do believe that it's happening. But primarily Black women are, they get with Black men, and primarily Black men get with Black women. And that's the actual fact. But
I agree with you that if the question was posed to most Black women, they would prefer to be with a Black man.
Yeah.
But my question to you, Dr. Jonathan, is, we've said a lot tonight when it comes to our culture, our people. What do you do? I just want to know, do you feel that Black men today even value relationships the way you describe them? The way you said, vetting the household. Are there really Black men who value having that beautiful woman on their arm being prideful of that woman, and just knowing, I feel like when we went and asked about boys will be boys, it made me think of more so allowing that boy to be released out of him going into his manhood and ready to take on what it means to have a family, have a wife, children, whatever that looks like for him, right? But and I could be wrong and I could be generalizing, but what I see is that is not at the forefront of most men's mind right now. They want to have fun. They want to kick it. In today's society, I don't even see. You said your father, if your mother even looked like something was wrong, your father went over. His spirit was so connected to her, from what I'm hearing, that he felt something was off with her. He could look at his wife and say, "Baby, are you okay?" He could pray. He could take her hand. He could go to the back room. That type of connection, is it valued in our society? I'm gonna just say in our culture right now, because I just don't see it. Maybe I'm not looking where I need to look, but I just don't see that value system in place. I see more so you get a woman, men aren't even afraid to break women's hearts anymore. They used to protect the heart. You understand? That was a part of their manhood. You say something about my wife, you saying something about me. If anything go on with her, I'm affected. Even growing up as a child, and I'm gonna let you respond. The one thing that I remember my dad saying to me, he would always say, without you, there is no me. If you stop breathing, I can no longer breathe. That little bit of knowledge or how he told me he felt, I took that with me because I felt like he loved me that much. So when I went to go look for a mate, I wanted to be loved that same way by a mate. So to ask this question, do you feel that in our society, men still value relationships in that way?
I feel that certain men. So when we talk about our society, you have a man out there that has all of that, that's looking for that, that's searching for it. He's out here, he's probably looking at this and like, man, if I could just find it, right? So we have the difference is this used to be more of the culture, right? The majority culture, because we still had some intact placement of family. We still had some intact placement of moral. We still had some impact just from some placement of example. Now, this is a wanting generation. In other words, it's hard to see that man because the majority of what you see, and I got to speak on behalf of men as well, a lot of men, just like women, are out looking for this particular thing. Men are out looking for this particular thing as well. The problem is we have a whole generation of people that only have wanting. They don't have assets. They have just wanting. And so they want needs. They want needs that usually wouldn't necessarily be on the table, right? They want, they say things like, get you somebody that's just going to help you unpack your bags. It's going to help you unpack all your luggage that you've been carrying around for your whole life. This things, that, and the other. And then they're basing that off what love is. Somebody that can fix you. Somebody not necessarily coming to the table fix, not coming to the table a whole person, not coming to the table with anything to actually put on the table besides what you have for me.
Or a plan for your family.
Say it again.
A plan for your family. Men need a plan for their family, leadership.
So men, if you've never seen your father deal in lineage, then it's not going to hit you hard to see structure that you've never experienced a day in your life. So you have two types of men. You have some men that never had that form of structure, and then they create that structure with everything in them. But then you have another set of men who are walking around here. They're hurt, but because they're men, they have to hold it. They got to put on the man face, right? We have a lot of men out here are just flat out hurt. And because we do have women this day and age, the men have been emasculated. We have women that like to lay on they like to lay on the feminine, but they have become masculine. The society has taken the financial hierarchy of a man has been flipped on his head. So usually he's not the main breadwinner. When you mix that with a young lady that's never been taught to respect a man a day in her life, really, she comes to the table. She says, "Oh, I love you," all of these particular things, as long as that man is accommodating her emotional need. Soon as that man is not accommodating her emotional need, or he starts to push back as a man in terms of finances, in terms of control, right? All of a sudden, the perceived control has been given into finances. Perceived control has been given into career. Perceived control and perceived power has been given into all these particular things. A woman is no longer coming up saying, "I just want to be a wife." A woman is coming up saying, I want my money, I want my career, I got to have it all. And then where my boo at? I don't need nothing from you. I just need you to come to the table and wipe my eyes and hug me and give me good sex, and that's it. And they don't even really, a lot of them don't even want marriage anymore because they don't want responsibility. So you have a man out here that's very discouraged, that it's not even being tended to. He's a young man or he's a young boy, and he's never even had this example that says, "Hey, this is a woman. This is your complementary. This is who is going to birth your lineage. This is who you have to protect." Guess what? But you must choose well. You do not have to pick anyone. Just like you have a standard for you, you have to have a standard for her. And so these are the reasons why and then you mix this with the internet, where the internet is loud. In other words, foolishness is loud. Right. So when you, and then when that becomes the culture, you start believing what you see.
Yeah.
And that's the problem of what we have today, is there are good brothers out there looking for good sisters, right? But the internet is loud. A lot of times you're looking in the wrong place, right? You kind of gotta go at it a different type of way. And then we have sisters though that they haven't been raised to even respect a man. So that's a heavy problem we have right now. I mean, what you get the man, but then he starts acting like a man. You're like, "Oh no, we don't want that."
Well, if I may comment, let's get down to brass tacks here. Let's just be straight, flat out honest. I agree wholeheartedly with you, Jonathan, that society breathes into us whatever it is that they want us to inhale. So whenever a black man has any kind of issue in any form of fashion, that is all over the news, particularly if he's a black man of power, he had some missteps in relationships with women or what have you. So society wants you to believe that, okay, so the white man or some man of another nationality, they don't do the things that, is perceived that a black man does. They do it. It's just that we don't pay attention to those things because those aren't things of any interest to us. So if it was a Ben Affleck or any of these high profile, men that does things like cheat on their wives or have extramarital affairs, any of that stuff, that's kind of brushed under the rug. But if it's a black man, it's like, okay, he is a black man. He went out and had several different children with these different number of women. They use this word baby mamas and all this other stuff. Who wants to hear that a man has 4 or 5 baby mamas? But then if he was a white guy, well, it's not described quite that way because he could probably take care of those kids. So, society has given us, a misconception that only black men do bad things in relationships. And a lot of the women are not, a lot of the white men, they're gentle, they're kind, they're nurturing, they're this, they're that.
Right.
the other thing that I would like to say is, for years, every other nationality has always looked at Black women as a prize. They have always looked and want to have what they see us have. They wanted to have
as
a relationship.
Prize, though?
Well, when I say a prize, is what I mean by that is something that they always wanted, but society wouldn't let them have it. And now that we're in a much more open society, Black women will say, well, I want to date a white man. White men say, I want to date Black women. And we have this misconception that, oh, they're not going to do those bad things to us like, a Black man does. And then we get upset a lot of times when we say, well, a Black man that becomes successful, he goes out and gets with a white woman. And, is that any worse or any better? No. I mean, but in the society we're in now, you have the freedom of choice. That's what you want. That's what you want. But I don't want anyone to walk away thinking that white men are so much better in terms of a choice for a mate than Black men. And the last thing I like to say is I agree as well with you, Jonathan, when you say a lot of times you hear there are no good Black men available. Well, what is a good Black man? A lot of times, what is perceived to be a good Black man, you don't want him because he doesn't have enough of something that you want, or he has a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but he doesn't have enough of that. So you don't choose him, but you want a man, but you don't want that man because he doesn't check all the blocks that you want to be checked. And then the last thing I said, the last thing just now, but also, as we stated, men don't have to do the same things anymore. The protecting, the providing, the running of the household, because as you stated, women want to be 50-50. If someone, knocks on the door at 12 at night,
not this one. I just want to say the way y'all describe that, I want this one.
I mean, I'm not saying
I don't want to be 50-50 either. That's not
in general.
Right.
That you have a lot of women, particularly in this area that we live in, they say, I don't need a man for nothing. I can take care of myself. I can take care of my own. I got my own house. I got my own car. I got my own this. I got my own that. I don't need a man for that. So, they'll say, well, if I can get this white guy, he probably comes to the table with all the things that I have. And that's just not true.
And I just want to say,
okay, I'll go on.
No, I just want to say, yes, I want to have those things, but I do desire a mate. I do desire someone to be able to build with, to grow with, and to acquire some of these things. But even if I have it on my own, I still want to be able to, let's go buy another piece of property. Let's go buy another home. Let's build a legacy together. And I know Andrea and I were talking last week about how we see millionaire Black women on TV and how they emasculate the men, or how they talk down to the men because I'm a millionaire. I don't really need you. I can do whatever. And so then we hype up these shows. We build them up to make it seem like this is what the Black women, the current stage of Black women is. And it's just unfortunate because these shows are glamorized. These shows, are put on a pedestal like, wow, this is who the modern Black woman is. Someone who says, I don't need a man. I could be a millionaire on my own. And that's true. I could be a millionaire on my own, but that doesn't mean I don't want someone by my side, or that doesn't mean I have to treat my man a certain type of way or emasculate him or disrespect him because I am who I am. So, and I think that's, again, those are the conversations we need to have with our daughters. These are the conversations we need to have with our nieces and our communities about, women. And, even amongst those type of women, we shouldn't treat our men a certain type of way or disrespect him because we've made it to a certain level. So,
and I just want to say, going back to all of this, I think there's beauty in, when two people are able to grow together. Because what I don't hear in our society a lot now is building together, grow together. I don't know, all this separation. I have $1 million, and I had conversations like this with a group of professional Black women, all professionals. We're gonna say doctors, lawyers, or whatever. And I asked the question, when it comes to our society, and if you want, as Jonathan said, you want a Black man, you may not find that 50-50 person. I don't even know where the 50-50 came from, splitting bills, splitting mortgage payments. That concept, I didn't grow up like that. So, I was always told, you build your household on what your husband can bring to the table. If you work, everything you do is extra. That's y'all cushion. That's your vacation money. That's your tuition for the kids, whatever, however you break it down. But it was never, we're gonna
50-50.
My husband can afford $250. I can afford $250. We're gonna bring it together and do $500. No, because what happens is, if one person loses their job, you in a bad situation. But if you're working and you have one person who messes up, you still have a cushion over here. So the whole 50-50 thing, I'm not an advocate for. I know a lot of households are set up that way, to each his own. But I just want to say, I have old school values. I just really, like John laughing over here, Richard. I thought I saw Jonathan's face because did you get choked a little bit, babe? So I just wanted to say, but Jonathan, you mentioned something earlier, and I wanted to pose this question to both of you guys before we get off. When it comes to expressing your emotions, one of the things, Jonathan, you said something about when you come into a relationship, releasing your baggage on someone, and how all these different things that Black men actually go through. And one of the things that actually brought this conversation we're having up tonight is Miranda and I were talking, and I brought up the subject that, when it comes to mental health and men in general, I just had never saw a man describe himself in these three words. I never heard a man say, I'm sad. I've never heard a man say, I'm happy. I'm having I'm having an awesome time. The expression of emotions from most men that you see only comes out in one way, and that generally is anger. You don't see the joyous joy, except when I was in Italy, but I won't tell the story again. You don't see the joyous joy, or you just see the low points. You don't, and even when it's a low point, not knowing how to express yourself with your words to say, babe, I want to sit down and talk to you about my day to day. I really didn't feel good about a presentation that I had. Just this, blame thing. I'm mad. This person said this. It's like this aggressiveness. So how do we, as women, talk to, when we see this type of behavior, how do we talk to a man? And then also, why does that exist? Why aren't men comfortable expressing their emotions?
And I wanted to also mention too, to add to that, is like, do men feel like they have a safe space to do that? Like, if you want to express your emotions, if you want to be vulnerable, if you want to come and say, I had a bad day, I'm sad, I'm happy, do you feel like, oh, here we go, another level of being emasculated again, or, oh, he weak, or he this, or he that, if he expresses emotions? Dr. J, you want to address that? You want to start off?
Absolutely. Men do not have a safe space. The safe space usually is within the tribal brotherhood. And this is something that does not exist any longer. It exists in a very corrupted form called gangs, right? This is why young men get caught up in gangs, early things of this nature, because they find a brotherhood of like minds, even if it's like minds that go out and participate in nonsense, currently. That is supposed to actually be a brotherhood, not that does anything against each other, but that's supposed to be a brotherhood, a space where young men can get this is the space where young men are men. This is also a space where they can sit down and get the advice from the elders or the elder brothers or the elder men. This does not exist in our communities. So you have a lot of young men that come up these days, and let's just be honest. There's a war against the man. The man is, if there's a war, And it's I mean, we can take it back, but things started getting very, very super independent when Beyonce started singing about being independent women, right? And this started influencing. I've been in the music industry since I was very young, so I watched it all, right? Producing and doing all these particular things. But I remember when certain songs came up, all my single ladies and all these things. I don't need a man to do this for me, and you know what I'm saying? I don't need no scrub. This started a culture of.
Jonathan, we can't hear you.
Okay, hold on one second. I'm not back yet. Can you hear me? All right, somebody chimed in. This brought in a culture of the I don't need a man culture, right? And then when you mix that I don't need a man culture with cats that's cool with that, they trying to be, you know, they trying to be players and everything else, then you start seeing this huge separation. In other words, there's no goal towards marriage. And so a lot of men these days, they don't have a safe space with women. Because in most cases, men have expressed themselves, and it might have been okay at the time or at the moment. But then because women, and watch what I say here, I'm not saying all women, but many women, see, when you haven't had a role model, aka father, properly, that you have to give the respect to, that teaches you how to respect a man, how to talk to a man, how to deal with a man, etc. When you don't have that, and when nobody has been checked for being loose at the lips and all these particular things, you have a man express himself, but then later on, when he doesn't fulfill what she needs him to fulfill, or forget even about that, when he starts to act masculine, right? Then there is no checks or balances that really stops her from, you know, going in on him. So you see this dynamic first, that first and foremost, men don't even get respect. Number one, there's no respect protocol out here. When I speak to women, and usually we're talking about a woman's needs, that's fine, right? But at the same time, usually when I'm holding these conversations, there's a lack of respect that comes to, hey, this is a man. The first thing you're going to give a man is respect on the planet. There's going to be nothing else that's going to be happy. There's going to be nothing else that's going to work out. Nothing else is going to be at peace until this man, number one, gets something called respect, because that's what a man is created to do. I've said in times before, I said, you know, when people are talking crazy to a man, I said, let me tell you something. They said, why did he react that way? I said, you are talking and dealing with a man in a way that another man won't even deal with him, right? And so what he has to do is he has to not just control himself, but he has to suppress himself. He has to suppress something that's naturally his, which is dominion, and which is respect. That should be given to him anyway. But he can't receive that because he was never really raised with how to even respect a woman on that particular level. So men don't have a safe space. This is why a lot of men, they don't have a brotherhood to go to really release it, because they don't trust the women. You see what I'm saying? So many of them have loved and got burnt for it, right? Or many of them had love and they just couldn't. Here's the flip side of it. Many have, they loved, but they could not live up to the expectation of the so-called man, right? Couldn't pay the bills, probably couldn't make enough money, couldn't, like, the daily struggle of a man is never addressed. It's all about, where the good men at, and why don't he be here for me? Right? And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, you dealing with a man.
So Dr. Jonathan, if the good man meets the good woman, how does that conversation start? Like, if the woman in a relationship wants to be that soft place, that ear, and to your point, the tribe. I mean, all I could think about was the barbershop, because that may be one of the only places that they have, you know, that ear. Right.
Right. A good woman and a good man. That's number one. We have to define good, but we won't do that today, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you really find solid, I like to say that better, solid or mature individuals that
Mm-hmm.
meet up with each other. The first thing they have the first thing they have an understanding on, and even if it's not a super deep understanding, is they have an understanding on their roles. That's number one. I'm not talking about something that comes together because we agree first and then it falls apart because you all keep coming back to innate roles and everything falls apart, right? In this day and age, when a man starts to be masculine, then that is perceived as a threat to a woman. Many women see that as a threat because they never experienced that, right? So they just want the love in the hugs, but they don't want the order in the household. So sometimes we have that particular issue. But when two people that are mature meet up, um, in this levels to that, my mother says all the time. She said, "You got to let God." She said God has to orchestrate, right? She said you got to let God orchestrate your life so that when God orchestrates it, you don't have to worry about things that come when it's not orchestrated. But for the average male and the average female that come together, the first word is maturity. Even if you don't understand everything, can you sit at this table with respect? Can you come together with an understanding that the goal is marriage because a man is bent on lineage and a woman is usually bent on love? When you bring these two things together, then you build a family. You build and through that, the tribe is built properly. So in this day and age, we need more than anything, we need mature vessels. You don't have to know everything, but please know how to respect a man, and a man should know how to respect a woman and understand her feminine space, and a woman should know how to respect a man and understand his male space. I watched something in this pandemic, and sometimes I wait for these things to happen, right? And I said, let me tell you something, brothers. Don't worry. First, when I deal with the brothers, I deal with them with, hey, prepare yourself. You have an obligation as a man to be prepared before you seek a woman. Because if you can't take care of a family, then just go ahead and sit that to the side for a minute, get your life together so that you can actually, do you even understand what this is? You don't want just a relationship. You have to be able to take a woman somewhere. Women want to innately go somewhere. In other words, they want to be taken in. Brother, if you're going to bring me into this, right? You're going to cover me, you're going to do this or not. But another thing that I deal, especially with the women too, is, hey, listen, you got to drop some of these barriers because you don't think you need a man, but that's only because you think you're safe. That's only because you think you have a false perception that you're on top because you make more than him. But if you were to understand that they gave you these things to make you more vulnerable than ever before, they can't be nothing worse than you not having a household. There can't be anything worse than you not being able to find a husband. That means your whole clan, your whole family, and your whole tribe has fallen through the roof. If you want to find a fallen people, find marriage that's fallen through the roof. Because now you know that no principles are being pushed down. There's no governing, there's no culture, there's no anything. So I watched one thing in the pandemic when it hit is I watched women get their respect back. Because when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden wasn't any accessible food just sitting up, around the corner at the grocery stores. All of a sudden, the reality strikes that if something here really goes left, if civil war hits, if I can't get around here to this corner, I need manhood. I need it all up in and around my life to protect me, to provide, to do all of these particular things that it's designed to do. I even saw some lesbian sisters that said they was out looking for a man, right? Looking for a man. Why? Because you can play that game all night long until true masculinity comes to the door to handle you in the form of an enemy. You need a force that's going to be there. I think in the scripture it says you don't go into a house of a strong man unless first you bind the strong man. Then you can go into that house. So one of the things I tell our women is this whole perceived thought process that you on top, or that you're getting your head of your man, is backwards. You are vulnerable. You are the most vulnerable person, the most vulnerable women on the planet. And it is our responsibility as men, right, to try to push and peer through this. And a man is truly seeking a woman that has enough faculties to be able to give him nurture. Even if he doesn't open up, that rub on his back might have set him free, you know, and that might unlock everything for that man in order for him to do what he needs to do. Men, I say it all the time, men do not wake up in the morning time trying to figure out a way to hate their women. That's not how men work. Men usually wake up in the morning time and they are not respected, and they're holding on to all of these things on the inside that's never been resolved, and then they lash out. You know, so for the ladies, before you make your picks, don't make pity picks, right? don't choose him just because he hurt. I want to help him. You know, don't
you want a project,
right? No projects.
Right. We don't want no projects.
Right.
And Rich, what do you? Go ahead.
Sure. You know, let's. You know, I always go back to the root, to the foundation of men. You know, men by virtue are generally brought up to have a very tough exterior. I mean, that's just by design. You know, how many times have you heard, big boys don't cry. You know, cry, you're soft, or if you do this, you're soft. So if you want to show emotion, in a lot of cases, even if you want to show it to your friend, you might get laughed at, you might get teased, you might get talked about, you know, in some form or fashion. So in a lot of cases, you're not going to expose yourself that way. If you did cry or showed emotion, you'd probably do it in private, and or keep it bottled in, because you don't want to face the repercussions of exposing yourself. So we generally don't express ourselves in a way of a soft emotion. If we do, it's going to be in form of a hard emotion, which in a lot of times would be some level of anger. Now, why do we express anger? Well, anger for us is a defense mechanism. So when you get angry, you gain a little bit more confidence, and you're able to say what you want to say, do what you want to do, versus being more monotone and relaxed. You won't do those things and react that way. But for us, every day is a tough day. We have to go out and we have challenges that, you know, our counterparts don't have. You know, we get, you know, doors slammed, we get, you know, less pay, we work harder, we get, you know, ridiculed about what we don't do and what we haven't done, what we don't have, you know, all those things. So it's a buildup of that emotion that gets spewed out in terms of, you know, reacting to everything in an angry fashion, because you are angry. You don't have a relaxing day. Even if something goes decent, you don't really celebrate that, because it's abnormal. It's not something that you're even used to. You can go on a vacation and have a good time, and it still be something that might just trigger you, just because it's something that you've been holding on to for the last couple months, couple weeks, couple whatever. So I think it's a lot different for Black males to be expressive in a soft emotional way, because it's just not something that we've learned. I mean, I know I don't really agree with learned behavior, because I think learned behavior is you absorb whatever you want to absorb. I mean, I can teach you or try to teach you anything, but you should be mature enough to either make a decision on whether it's right or wrong, or something you want to embrace or carry on as a characteristic of your life. Just because I told you doesn't mean that's something you want to do. I mean, I have uncles and a lot of my family members who are all alcoholics, and I saw them drinking at a very, very young age. Ideally, I would have assumed that same characteristic and become an alcoholic as well. But I elected not to take on that particular, characteristic that they have, or however you want to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, our anger is just because we're just challenged constantly. For our counterpart, you can ask them, well, what is your plan for tomorrow? They may say, oh, I'm gonna go do this, go do that. When I go to bed tonight, my plan for tomorrow is to get to tomorrow, because I don't know if I'm going to make it into tomorrow like they do. They know that they're going to be, safe. They're not going to be challenged by anybody. They can go down the street, go to a store and not be looked at funny or have any kind of issues that we have because of who we are or what we look like. They don't know who we are. They just know what we look like, and they have a perception that we're going to do bad things. So that makes us angry. And you go back home, and how do you express that? You don't express that in tears. You probably would express that in anger. I mean, I go to sports. When you see in sports, you see guys, they score a basket or they dunk on someone. What's the expression that you see that guy show after he dunks on someone? It's a, it's not, hey man, that was real nice. I did a good dunk. Wow. No, it's that that
aggression.
Aggression, yeah. It's just who we are. I think as a people, just from years ago, we just react that way. I don't think there's a good answer to it, but I think that's some of the reasons why we do behave in the way that we do.
So what is healing? So what does healing look like, or what does like a mental, having your mental capacity intact, what does that look like, and what do you need to get there? What do you feel like you all need as men to be in that place where you can have a healthy state of mind, a healthy mental faculties, and you have a place where you can just live and have that healing space for yourselves, and then be able to have a healthy family? What does that look like, Rich? What do you think that is needed for that?
Yoga.
My wife said yoga, but I think it's a maturation process where you have to be acceptable of letting your guard down and allowing yourself to express all the emotions that are within you as an individual. I think, if you are the head of a household, you can tell your son that, it's okay to cry if you're upset or something's bothering you. It doesn't make you any less of a man if you shed a tear. It's not okay just because your sister can cry and you can't. That's an emotion that we all have. So I think if it's something that we allow to grow in our next generations, for some of us, it's going to be kind of tough. That's like learning how to swim when you're 55. It's just very difficult. But if you can get the younger generation to be more expressive, and I think we're getting there, because you look at, I look at a lot of things on TV where a lot of the young men are being a little bit more expressive and a little more emotional than a lot of us, older folks who, growing up, like I said, it just wasn't something that, was considered acceptable. But I think now it's something that we can probably teach the youth to say it's okay. And maybe look at other examples of individuals, expressing how they feel and not being ridiculed for it. And I think usually that's going to be the case. A lot of times it's going to have to be someone that they look up to or they see cry and shed tears, like an athlete or someone, in
a family member,
or someone like that, a family member, and say, okay, give them a hug and show them that it's okay to cry. But if we do something like that and give examples, I think we have a pretty long way to go.
And I just want to say, last night when we were lying in bed, I don't know, I think it's March Madness that's coming up or started yesterday or whatever. And there was this father who was very upset. Like he literally like was, upset and in tears because he said he had never spent this much time away from his son because, they have to quarantine for the basketball game. And I just wanted to commend this man to be able to say that on national television, that he felt an emotional part of himself of sadness because he wasn't able to hug his son, tell his son, I love you,
Right.
lay eyes on his son. I was, it was so refreshing just as a woman to be able to hear that. I don't even hear, and again, this may be because I don't have children, but just men in general just expressing I love you. Like when we get off the phone, most women be like, okay, girl, I love you. I'll talk to you later. Just that type of communication just doesn't exist in a lot of cases.
And I think a lot of times, like Dr. J said earlier, we need to have that in the home because I know with my sons, I tell them I love them. I kiss them. They kiss me on the cheek or they hug me. Even my grown son. I mean, we still say that now we hang up the phone. I think we need to show an example that it's okay, not just from the mothers, but the men in their lives as well, that it's okay to say, I love you, kiss you on the cheek. Or, I see Owen had a special about Black dads, I am dad or something like that, where, you see the men kissing their sons on the lips. I mean, and their little sons, like they might be 2 or 3 years old, just showing that affection that I love you. And it doesn't have to mean anything inappropriate. I'm just showing my love towards you because you are my child, you are my seed. And I love you. And it's okay to show that. And I think we need to, like you said, in our homes, a family member, an uncle hugging, the young men and letting them know I love you and not, because even myself growing up, there wasn't a lot of expression of love and saying, oh, I love you in our home. It wasn't a lot of that, but I wanted to raise my children to make sure they knew, like, okay, let's express love. Let's express emotions in the home. You're not less than a young man if you cry or you upset or whatever. We're not going to demean you. We're not going to disrespect you. Because I think a lot of times in homes, when a young man cries or does something, they get teased, they get picked on, they get they are like, oh, you a punk, da 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 da. I think we should just really understand that it's okay, or just be able to let them know it's okay to have emotions. And so it's just really important. But we've been on here a while, and I really want to, for the men on here, I don't know if you want to address anything about mental health or just having strong mental health and healing. Dr. J, I wanted to ask you, what does healing look like in your life or in the community? What do you think, healing looks like for you as a Black man?
First you have to address the elephant in the room. And we have to stop just talking around things in the community, or not even talking about it at all, or just dealing with the results or the effects, but not dealing with the cause. I think it takes responsible men and responsible women to come to tables and get loud. It takes responsible. I mean, even if you look back over history, change took place because responsible men and responsible women got loud, and they got loud enough for others to hear it, and then they become the example, and then someone follows the example. I think the mental health for our young men, it has to start with us. It has to start with men that already can address a problem, men that were already part of the problem, men who birthed the problem. First, number one, for men, it's a thing of, hey, relaxing long enough to say, hey, in this world, there's a moral construct. You either gonna be good or bad. You're gonna either go for righteousness or evil. At the end of the day, when righteous men stand up, now you got something, right? Because now you have a moral compass and a moral code that can be passed down. A man that's not righteous can heal, but he's not going to pass down a moral code to his son, right? So I think in this particular, we're really not dealing with the fullness of it, but for the mental health of a young man is, first I would literally say, relax and look for leaders. Relax and look for, even if it's not what a person thinks is a leader, start just looking for what is more positive. Start looking for something that, that goes with the fact that I want to be a right type of a man. I don't want to be a wrong type of a man. If I get angry, I don't want to cuss this woman out, right? So I think we as men, mental health is really starting to deal with, first and foremost, men have got to relax long enough to see the issue. Then there's a whole myriad of things that have to take place in terms of lifestyle. One of the things I like to do is I put people on what's called purity protocols. And so what we start doing is emptying a person's cup. You hold on to all of this. So first thing we start doing, let's get into a purity protocol. Let's start eating right. Let's start seeking anything that's light. Let's start seeking it. Let's start being it. Let's start veering in that direction. But I think a major clarion call that has to go out to my generation, the elders above me, and those that are wise, that are even younger than me, but have latched on to wisdom is, I work heavy in the network marketing field, and there's the power in word of mouth. It don't have to be the grandest root, ad. It doesn't have to be, but literally just a little bit of word of mouth in connection from real men that can be an example, because the example still hasn't gone. Just because a child was raised and didn't have his father there, guess what, baby? Walk outside the door, and there are plenty of us still here that can be an example to you. We just need people to get up off the couch. I need that good man to get up off the couch, because he used to being at home. I don't do that internet thing, so they don't really know I'm here, right? I need brothers to get off the couch, men and elders to get off the couch, and to really understand that, hey, you're needed more than ever right now. You have got to be an example, right? Next time we want to do 1,000,000-man marches, 100,000-man marches, call me up when we marching into the hood. Or matter of fact, I'll call y'all up, right? So that's, we've got to connect, we've got to network, and we've got to create things that give safe spaces for the young boys to come to. And for those that are already in those, we just want to encourage that, but we got to create safe spaces for the young boys to come to. And then it can be passed down. And then the women, you walk in, we just need y'all to be nurturing, loving, selective, but start putting your king, you want to call him king. You ain't no queen without no king. Queens don't crown themselves. For the ladies is put that man back where he's supposed to be, right? Don't let him disrespect you and all that stuff, but put him back there. Keep him on the throne. I remember one time my mom was speaking to me back in the day, and she came and she greeted me. She said, "Now I'm talking to the king, not the fool." And that's right. And I'm considered, I'm trying to do what I do, right? But when she came to me, that put me in a place of, hey, give me your undivided attention on this level, because this is where you walk, this is where you stand. If you want your men to be back where they're supposed to be, you are one of the key players of the game that have to put him there. A man cannot be in the position, right, of a lead if the follower don't want to follow. So if you start learning how to put a man there, the right man there, I'm not talking about putting the abusive man there and all that particular thing. And when you put the right man there, then I guarantee you it's going to start coming out. And we're going to start getting our communities back together again. We need God men to stand up again. We don't like to talk about God enough in this society.
That's good. I appreciate that. And Rich, what do you want to add to that? Because, we could probably go on another hour, but, we want to be respectful of everybody's time.
I would definitely make my response short if possible. So I think the first step in healing is recognizing a problem, as Jonathan said, that we need to understand that mental health is real. It's not something that that only certain people deal with, in a particular capacity. We all have some type of issue that we need to probably resolve internally and externally. Mm-hmm. And I think the first thing is, you have to, expose your your issues in your conscience, or you'll battle those issues in your unconscious. And what I mean by that is, it's going to come out somehow in some form or some fashion, whether you want it to or not. You can only hold in issues or problems for so long, or they're eventually going to come out in some fashion. Whether it's going to be, you talking to someone and using a resource to help you figure it out, or you internalize it and you have these, thoughts in your head, or dreams, or things that you can't control, because you can't control your dreams. But a dream is just a reality of your self-conscious. I mean, it is what it is. And if you don't expose it when you're awake, it'll expose itself to you when you're asleep.
Right.
So I deal with different issues myself, and a lot of my issues are exposed through my unconscious, or through self-consciousness, through dreams of things that has probably I've been internalized probably for years. I mean, I've gone through counseling in my life. I am probably just realizing the importance of counseling, because I'm just like a lot of typical men. We don't need counseling because no one can tell us how to fix ourselves.
Right.
We can self-medicate. We can counsel. That's just who we are. It goes back to expressing yourself and expressing emotion, because real men don't need to be counseled. That's what soft guys do. That's what guys who who aren't masculine, they go get counseling. That's what women do. They go and spew out their emotions. Men don't do that, because whatever that problem is, we'll eventually fix it ourselves. And in reality, there's some things that we just can't fix.
Right.
So I think that's the first part of the healing process. And I think also, if you can heal yourself, then you can maybe help heal someone else. Some people help heal others through healing others, and maybe that might be a technique as well. But if you're going to go into a session talking to someone, you have multiple problems yourself, that may block your ability to help the other person. So you probably need to resolve your own issues before you try to help someone else. And a lot of our young folks need us. They need our help. They have a lot of issues that they don't realize are issues, and then they have issues that become issues that really aren't issues. But that's just the world that we live in, because we're exposed to so much stuff that I think they just can't absorb it all, because it's just coming at them so fast and furious. There's always something different that they look at and see every day, that they just can't keep up and manage it to a point to where they don't realize it's not that big of a problem.
Right. So I believe, being a proponent as a counselor myself, being a proponent of counseling, being able to speak to someone and being able to go and share, especially with Black men, maybe finding a Black male counselor, like Dr. J was saying earlier, that brotherhood, so you may feel more comfortable speaking to someone that looks like you, who may have had the same experiences. So I really am a proponent of counseling, and just maybe speaking to your pastor, or going, like you say, having that safe space of someone you can speak to in order for the healing process to begin. And, we may have to do a part 2 on this, because we didn't mention half of the things we wanted to talk about. But before we end, I wanted to ask you all, or gentlemen, what makes you a king on tonight? What do you consider why do you consider yourself a king? And what legacy do you want to leave to this world? So Rich, I want to go with you first. What makes you a king, and what legacy do you want to leave the world?
Well, for me,
that's a good question.
Yeah, that is a very good question. What makes me a king? What makes me a king is my ability to take care of those that I've taken responsibility for. As a king, I'm a leader. As a king, I'm a provider. As I'm a king, I'm a problem solver. As a king, I'm an intellect. As a king, I am worldly. I am of value in multiple different ways. I think that I've given of myself to this world, and I know that there's a whole lot more that I can give. So far as a legacy, I think we all have legacies that we have, whether we openly understand what they are. I think just by being here in this world allows me to be a legacy, because I don't think legacies are built based on what people recognize you being, because by me being, I'm a legacy in itself, because God put me here for a purpose. So God built my legacy the day I was born, and my legacy will end on this earth when He decides that I'm no longer needed here. But it doesn't mean that my spiritual legacy will ever die.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I've never heard that before. Like you said, not what you necessarily leave on this earth, but when you're born, you're a legacy. So that is awesome. Very profound. And Dr. J, what do you have to say about that?
That was deeply profound, my brother. For me, a king is ultimately one who rules well, and one who rules with the heart of God, aka a servant leader. So the first thing that a young man or me myself, I don't really hang, hard on the words, etc. I hang hard on the proof. Can I rule myself? Do I rule my emotions well? Do I rule my footsteps well? Do I rule my intent well? Is God the source that rules my movement on this planet well? And how does that serve others? I think a lot of times when we talk about king, we talk about this world rule, but what is the rule that you're laying down? What are the rules or the parameters that you're laying down that's going to bring abundance to whomever you rule, right? To whomever you serve. So me myself in particular, I was put here to serve, but part of that is leadership, and part of that is putting down God's rules and perspectives. Because I'm not here for myself. I have a tattoo that says I am sent. I'm not here for myself. So I'm more here on orders. So for me, it's I had received a wonderful example with my father of what a king looks like, and how he rules his household, and how he serves the people, and how he gives them God on the platter and everything else that's within him. And my father also taught me something that you come here and give your service to God until you're relieved of your duty. And so there's a mission aspect to it in regards to me, making sure that from A to Z that my purpose is fulfilled, what God put me here for my hands to do, from my personal household, from my personal self, all the way out to the people that, God's people, or the people of the world. So it's about being integral with how you hold your seat if you want to be called king.
Amen. That's all awesome. You all are amazing. Rich and Dr. J, you guys are awesome. Andrea, do you want to add anything or say anything before we wrap this up for tonight?
No, I just want to say thank you both for joining us. I know this is definitely out of Rich's comfort zone. This is his wife's platform. She's the one that's always showing up and showing out. So I just want to say thank you, Rich. And Dr. Jonathan, it was a pleasure meeting you. Your insight was unbelievable. I hope to follow you on Facebook or somewhere. But it was a great conversation. And hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Thank you all, both Rich and Dr. Jonathan, for agreeing to come on the platform, the I'm Bougie Girl podcast platform. Andrea, we are going to be doing many things in the future together. We will be on Clubhouse on Sunday, talking more about friendships. But I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined in and chimed in on tonight, everyone who made their comments, everyone, Dr. Jonathan and Rich, for taking out the 2 hours of your day to be a part of this conversation. Super grateful and super thankful. You all share this out, tag your young sons, your uncles, your nephews, your cousins, your husbands, and just rewatch this broadcast. Share this out, and thank you all so much for following this broadcast and this platform. I'm super grateful and thankful. You all have a blessed weekend, a blessed night. And you all, did you want to say something?
No, we just being ourselves.
Y'all being silly over there. Y'all being.
I would say that it was indeed an honor and pleasure to have this dialogue. And again, I hope that what I had to share would be of value to those who were listening, and those who in the audience, and maybe many others. Dr. Jonathan, it was actually an absolute pleasure, exchanging our thoughts on these particular topics. And Miranda, I appreciate you inviting me to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys, and good night, everyone. Joanne and Joyce and everyone who's a part of this. You all have a blessed night. Thank you. Have a great weekend, and we will see you again soon.
All right.
God bless you all. Good night.